Because she loves Brooklyn.
Huh?
She loves Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's all about Brooklyn. But I opened up the here's I can't.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Look at that.
Yeah.
That is the wreck coming right down.
You see
With
it?
United right there.
Yeah. You see it? That picture has been shown hundreds and hundreds of times since. See. Here.
Oh, now there's, on December 16th, 1960, a commercial airliner collided with another airliner after attempting an emergency, landed in Prospect Park, kind of. Prospect Park neighborhood, yes.
Yeah.
7th Avenue and Sterling Place. Wow. So we wanted to know what you remember about that time or that day.
I'll tell you very. You see, here, sit down.
Are you getting levels? Sophia might come sit over here. Can we get a chair? Do you mind if we get a chair? Do you mind?
Yeah, sure. No, that doesn't work.
Oh, what about this one? Does this
This
one?
doesn't work either.
All right, we're fine. We don't need it. Oops.
In 1960, I was working for Pepsi-Cola,
Uh-huh.
and that day, I remember very well.
Good. We were interested.
We had a meeting, and the meeting broke up, and everybody went back to their own office. When I got back to my office, the meeting was on the 9th floor, 10th floor, and the office was on the 7th floor. And I got down, everybody was buzzing about the airplane crash. What crash? And then I heard, and somebody came over to me and said, hey, it was on your street. Because the radio reports were Sterling Place.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Sterling Place runs all the way across Brooklyn. And then they started talking about Flatbush Avenue and 7th Avenue. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, this is my street. My mother is there.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was home. But as it turned out, it was the other side of Flatbush Avenue. And the rest of the day, of course, was filled with radio, and it was a terrible day. Snow and ice all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, the only information that I had was that part of the airplane had dropped off near St. John's Place, a block away on Flatbush Avenue. There was a pharmacy, Durier's Pharmacy, had been there for years and years and years. And all the pictures that were taken all had the Duryea sign in them. And for like 40 years they had pictures. Duryea had since gone out of business. It's now a Duane Reade drugstore.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember coming home on the subway, getting off at 7th Avenue, and I walked from Plaza Street, and the ice and snow were all over. And
Could you smell the fire?
no, I don't recall, but
And you knew your mother was okay by then?
oh yeah, see, I called up right away. As soon as I called home, I knew, because I spoke to her. Besides, when the radios talked about 7th Avenue, I knew that was at least a block away from my house. And there was snow and ice all over. But as usually happens in a situation like that, there were all sorts of vehicles parked in the street, and they had those interrupting lights. There were fire engines, police cars, ambulances, and I made my way home, and that was it. But across the street, okay, if you walk down the street, you go to Flatbush Avenue. And if you walk straight down Sterling Place across Flatbush Avenue, you get to 7th Avenue. And somewhere on 7th Avenue, there was a parochial school. And it was just a stroke of luck that the children were sent home for lunch, and they had long passed when part of the airplane fell on 7th Avenue, and the tail of the airplane, as that picture shows, fell in front of Duryea's. You know, it's hard to figure out 2 airplanes, the length of time it would take part of the airplane to fall on St. John's Place and part on 7th Avenue.
Wow. So can you describe the neighborhood back then, and what were the kind of, right in that area, what kind of housing was it?
Yeah, well, that's across the street on Sterling Place. There were a bunch of brownstones. Some are still there and some are not there. They were what they used to call hotbed rooming houses. And there were a lot of shift workers who lived in those houses. In other words, 2 men shared a room. One guy worked the night shift, the other guy worked the day shift. And because they were in and out, and some of those houses have since been obliterated and sold, and they rebuilt the neighborhood. Now, the neighborhood was pretty much just where there's a Christian Science reading room across the street. That was a very, very fancy restaurant. It was a real staple of the community. Now, on the other side of Flatbush Avenue, on the far side is now a gym, Crunch Gym. Where the Crunch Gym sits is now, or was now, a cafeteria. I used to go there for breakfast occasionally. The police department and the hospitals took over the cafeteria, and they used it partly as a morgue and partly as a first aid station. And I got home about 6 o'clock, and there was utter confusion on the streets, and all the flashing lights of all the vehicles, police, fire, ambulances, and then of course that night the TV was filled with it, And it was such a lousy night, cold and snowy and icy, and I figured there's no sense in trying to get near there because there were cops and they wouldn't let you go, and it wasn't until the next day that I was able to get the New York Times, and I read about it and got some of the idea of what happened. Because there were so many different people who lived in those brownstones and the bedrooms, they never really got a body count, but they never knew who was there.
Can you explain that? Like, tell me about those houses and how people came and go and come and go, how might have come and gone, and why again? Like, why? How would they not have known who was there? How would they have not have known? What was? Do you think the life was like in those houses?
Well, you see,
hotbed houses.
there were a lot of people who worked on the docks, and that they were no longer domiciles the way you and I know. I mean, they were bedrooms, and all these people did, they slept there. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of them ate in that cafeteria, and then they went to work. They worked on the docks, and there were a few factories, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think? How do you think New York felt? Because that was, in a way, it's not like September 11th because it wasn't a wartime but did people feel vulnerable, like all of a sudden?
No, well, I mean, no. I mean, it was an airplane crash, and you can't worry about two airplanes flying and colliding because the air was filled with airplanes going. They used to call JFK Idlewild at that time.
Yes.
And there were planes going to and from Idlewild. There were planes flying over from to LaGuardia. And it was a terrible accident, but I mean, you got used to seeing a lot of planes flying in the air.
Right. Can you tell me a little bit more about that part of Sterling Place and how you would demographically, how would you describe what sort of people were living in that area then?
You might say they were lower class people who lived on it because they were all manual workers, and all that they used those rooming houses were to sleep. There were some people who on the other side of the street there was the back sides of the business building. See, in addition to the cafeteria, there was a store that had been there for years. They sold Jamaican patties, meat patties.
I remember that store.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Oh, yeah.
It was very good.
And what is now walk down the other side of Flatbush Avenue, what is now a women's clothing store, was a movie theater. Mm-hmm. And occasionally I'd go in there. And so further down, I believe it's on 6th Avenue, is a beautiful church. And the church is there.
Still there.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I just wanted to ask you one more question about the hotbed houses. What kind of thing do you think was going on economically in New York or in the United States that made it so that people, even people who worked full-time jobs, couldn't afford to have their own apartments? What was going on?
Well, you see, you don't know, of course. A lot of these workers maybe lived there because they had no families. You know, that there were a lot of itinerant workers coming through Brooklyn. Some would work on the docks. There were some factories, and it was not a very affluent neighborhood. You see, the Brooklyn Gas Company started a program which now is very successful. They were looking to sell their gas, and they would help people who wanted to buy houses, who wanted to move there. The Brooklyn Union Gas Company had this gentrification problem, but mainly on the other side of Sterling Place, it was not affluent. See, this side of Sterling Place, across the street diagonally is another apartment building that I formerly lived there.
Oh,
You see?
so you've lived on this street your whole life, pretty much, right?
Well, no. When I came home from the war, we lived in 214 Sterling Place. And then my brother-in-law, Sid's husband,
Yeah.
was in the real estate business. And he knew somebody who owned this house. And I believe it was 1948, 49. We moved across the street to this apartment.
So you've been here a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, most of my life, until I was 3, my family lived on East 77th Street in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then my father wanted to move to the country, and we moved to Brooklyn. We moved to the Borough Park section of Brooklyn.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And so all through my formative years, I went to public school and New Utrecht High School, where I graduated. Now, I guess it was in 1939. My sister had married, and she lived in Flatbush, and my mother decided to move, and we moved to Manhattan, where she wanted to be closer to her brother. Remember the lady that I introduced?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hortense, my cousin, the lady who's 100 years old. Her father was my mother's oldest brother. He was a very fine doctor. Oh, he was a genius. He was a neurologist and a psychologist, and he also had a law degree. So we moved to 98th Street. My mother and I, because my mother wanted to be in Manhattan, closer to her brother. And in 1940, I went into the service. And stayed in it until 1945.
5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
October, well, it was 4 years, 11 months, and I think 45 days. I went in October 1940, which is 11 months before the war, before they bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
So then I stayed in the Air Force all during the war.
Were you based in Europe?
No, in the United
Oh,
States.
in the United States.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, see, I got involved in, I went to a mechanic school. You may have seen the pictures.
Yeah.
And when I finished the mechanic school, maybe I asked all the right questions, or I became very much interested in carburation.
Carburation.
Yeah,
Like carburetors.
airplane engines. And they kept me at the school as an instructor
Ah, I
in
see.
carburetions in Illinois. And I went to, and I stayed to the opening of 2 new schools in Texas. And then they finally sent me in 1943 to Yale and to an aircraft engineering school. When I graduated, I was a lieutenant, and they sent me to Florida. And I stayed in Florida for a year. Then I got into the flight part of it, auto mechanics. Remember the picture of the airplane on the, that was a 4-engine bomber.
Wow.
That was called the B-29. That was the type of bomber that dropped the atomic bomb on...
You knew how to fly? No, you knew how to do the mechanics on that.
Hmm?
You could do the mechanics on that.
Yeah, no.
No.
I was a flight engineer. I was on the flight crew. And in 1945, they were test flying to pick up crews to join the squadron they were forming in the Pacific to drop the atomic bomb. For whatever reason, they left me behind in Louisiana in training in some kind of a reserve category. But in August of 45, when they dropped the bomb, the war was over. So they said to me, "Thank you very much, bye-bye." And I came home in September of 45.
Did you know anybody on that plane who was working on the plane?
No,
In
no,
Hiroshima?
no, you see, there was a guy by the name of Tibbets, Paul Tibbets. You've heard of him. Oh, he's a famous man. He was the best pilot in the Air Corps.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they wanted to fly Eisenhower back from Europe to meet with Roosevelt, he was the pilot. And they were training, he's his hand-picked guys. They trained in Utah, and then they flew them all over to Saipan, and then they picked the 2 planes to drop the bombs.
Was he driving one of those? Or
Who?
he was the pilot of one? Tibbets was one of the
Yeah,
pilots?
he was the pilot. Paul Tibbets was the pilot that dropped the bomb over Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Wow.
He died about less than a year ago.
So he would drive Eisenhower, and then they picked him to drop the
Well, you see, he was the best.
bomb.
He was the best no. He wasn't just Eisenhower's chauffeur. He was the best 4-engine pilot that the Air Corps had. And he flew missions in the air war over Europe.
Do you know if he ever expressed any emotional, anything emotional after dropping the bomb on Hiroshima?
Not him, no. Some of, he was very, he remained in the service. I think he retired as a general. But that was, but as far as I was concerned, that's when hey,
You
I
were
got
done.
a chance to go home.
Right, right. Well, did you have any questions, Sophia, about the
No, I
hotbed
think you
houses
asked
or anything?
everything.
No, but getting back to
Yeah.
the crash,
We've been talking a lot about airplanes. Yeah.
I knew about airplanes, and from my flying experience, I knew it was possible in bad weather for planes to collide because it happened. But it's interesting. Every December, for like almost, well, let's see, this is 1960, and it's what? It's 56
50 years. Exactly 50 years.
Every December, the week before Christmas, there's always an article in the newspaper, and they keep running that picture over and over again.
We saw a picture of a woman who was wearing a leopard skin coat, and she was the person who found the boy who was thrown out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember that picture, but I remember this, hearing about the woman who found the little boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You see, there were 6 people were killed on the ground. I think the little boy survived. Yeah.
he survived only one day.
One thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And that's about it.
well, thank you for telling us so much.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in the moment that it happened, and those people who might have been in the apartment, in the hotbed rooms, and might have not been there, and just that moment of chance.
Well, you see, a lot of these people, maybe they didn't give their right. It was a moment of conjecture. They were never able to get an obituary list. For example, if somebody had rented a room and gave the name of John Smith, they wouldn't even know if that was his right name. And they never really established a list of the dead people who were in those houses, because they were transient workers, they were transient people. Maybe some...
So nobody would have said, "Hey, my brother's missing," because they didn't have those connections.
They were all transient workers. There were no families, no.
Yeah, and they were probably all men. Do you think?
Oh yeah. They were laborers, because there were some who were off shift who maybe were interviewed at the time in the papers.
Well, thank you so much. That was really interesting.
Well, yeah, but it's a funny thing. I saw that there was a that book said that one of the pilots tried to land in Prospect Park. There's no way that a pilot could land a plane in Prospect Park.
What about the meadow?
Well, I mean, it was too small,
Yeah.
and without a runway, it was just bad luck and bad weather.
We read what happened was the planes collided over Staten Island,
Yeah,
and then One went down in Staten Island, and the other
Yeah,
one
Continue, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see, Paul, you see by the tail that fell off. So one plane, the United plane, they lost their steering.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was United and TWA.
yeah.
Okay. That was
Yeah,
really,
it's interesting. TWA is
doesn't it?
out of business,
Yeah.
and United has just merged with Continental.
It's going to be really big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, what they did is they put one loser together with a Continental, was a well-run airline, and who knows?
But they're going to call it United.
Yeah, but when you put two bad corporate entities together, this doesn't mean you're gonna have one good one.
Yeah.
No.
You know about business.
Yeah, well, I mean, two negatives don't make a plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No. Well, but I neglected.
Oh, did you just want to say something?
No, I neglected to ask you, how are the girls?
Oh,
Yeah.
the girls are good.
Yeah.
They're studying hard these days because they just have a few more weeks of school.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But they're doing fine. They're good. Oh, Mark just got tenure. Yes, 2 days ago. He got tenure at Fordham.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Oh,
So that's good. So
that
now
is-
he can misbehave as much as he wants.
Oh yeah.
So that's good. That's nice.
Well, how long has he been without tenure?
Well, you have to be there 7 years and then you get tenure.
Oh, so he's been there 7 years?
Yeah. So, but he's happy about that.
Well, that's all right, he should be.
Means it'd be hard to fire him.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's cool.
so that's good.
And tomorrow I'm having lunch with Bobby.
Oh, you're gonna
So
have
I'll
lunch?
tell her how I really, really am so pleased that I got to come and ask you the questions.
Well, good. There's one, I remember that
Right, Sofía? Yeah, tell it what we,
coming down from the 9th or 10th floor down to the 7th floor, I didn't wait for the elevator. I walked down the stairs.
you were so nervous.
No,
No.
I want to get back to my office.
Quickly.
Yeah, and go to work. Being in the staircases, nobody was there, but all the people in the elevators were buzzing, and I walked right to my office, and people looked at me and said, "What's with him? Doesn't he know? It's his street." And as soon as I heard about it, wow, then I got on the phone, and that was my reaction.
And what did your mother say? Had she heard the crash?
She heard, well, all she heard was sirens, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, and she said the place is noisy as hell, you know.
Was she scared?
Oh yeah, I'm sure, well, but you see, this has always been a fire street.
Oh, for the engine.
Yeah. There's a firehouse way back up Sterling Place, and all these engines sirens were going, so that's enough to make somebody nervous, but she could see the house was still standing, you know.
I have one more question to ask you. How does the process of a memory for an event like this work out? How do you keep all of this in your head? Like these event, like if I said what else happened in 1960, could you pull out things and say what was special about that year, or is this a highlight of 19? Is this one of the major things that you remember?
Well, I mean, you know, it was certainly a major thing. You know, I mean, there are major things that happen that affect you. There are major things that happen that don't affect you. For example, I will always remember Pearl Harbor Day because that changed the whole life in the Army. I'll always remember 9/11, but the fact that it had to do with airplanes. I was always, even as a little kid, I was always interested in airplanes. And in fact, the biggest reason why I joined the Army was it was an opportunity to learn how to become an airplane mechanic. They had a school that I enlisted into, see? As an Army, I was never really a soldier. I never carried a gun, never fired a gun. I was always a technician, but I was always interested in airplanes. So the fact that this had to do with 2 airplanes, the fact that it was on Sterling Place, and the fact that every year, for 60 years, there's a notice about this on my street, Sterling Place.
So
that's how I remember it.
how do you feel in your life? How do you feel like when big events happen in the world, how do they affect you?
I'm interested in them, but they really don't affect me. The things that affect me, well, for example, when they dropped the atomic bomb, great. It meant it affected me. I was going to go home. The war was over.
Mm-hmm.
That's when 9/11. It affected me. I remember crowds of people walking up Flatbush Avenue from downtown New York. But, you know, things happen, but if there's a kernel of attachment between you and what happened, I mean, I knew for a fact that I knew nobody who worked in the Twin Towers. I was a little uptight. Molly was working in that area.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah.
With the coins.
Yeah. She worked with John Herzog, and they were a couple of blocks away. But that was the only thing that affected me. As soon as I found out from Bobby that Molly was okay,
Right.
So things happen. I mean, you know, there was the bombing in Oklahoma City. It was a terrible thing, but it never mind.
What about during World War II? Were you ever nervous about being Jewish and what was going on with Hitler and all of that?
Well, you see, as far as Hitler was concerned, I had a personal attachment to that. You see, one of my mother's brothers had a business in Germany, and they chased my Uncle Harry and his wife and his daughter out of Germany because he was Jewish, and they took away his business from him.
But he wasn't killed.
What?
He wasn't killed.
He,
He wasn't killed.
no, you see, he emigrated in 1938 or
Oh, good.
39
Good.
to Canada and to start another business. So during the war, look, nobody knew too much about the concentration camps because it wasn't until the war was over that the world knew that they were systematically killing Jews. The only Jews who mattered to me were my uncle married a Christian woman, and he was out of Germany, and I knew they took away his business, but that was the only. There was no way of knowing what was going on.
Till it was over.
Oh yeah, sure. Until the Allied advance overran those concentration camps. This is some of the thing that both sides kept it from the public.
Astonishing.
I mean, but my biggest concern during the war was getting through the war in one piece and coming home.
And you did it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's my mother's father. And this lady here was my grandmother. That's my mother's mother.
Do you remember her?
Oh yeah, sure.
Your mother's mother. Wow.
And you see me?
Just 1 second. Yeah, look, stuff like that. That's beautiful. Or just like that school there, the couch. Mm-hmm.
You see, my cousin who was at the party, these were her grandparents too.
Oh, because she's your first cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll show you this. Deborah's boys.
That's adorable.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
bikes. And then, yeah, this is
I was glad that Deborah came to the party.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen her in years.
And I bought the little one. He wanted a big boy bed.
Oh, so you bought that?
Yeah,
Oh,
I got it for him. And
that's
and Deborah took this picture of the three boys.
that's adorable.
On Aaron's bed. Yeah. This is a picture of my father at Buffalo
Wow.
Bill's grave.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Buffalo. Did he make a pilgrimage there?
yeah.
Was he fond of Buffalo Bill?
Well,
Here, I have to get the light on it a little bit.
he was fond of the West.
Uh-huh. Wow. Where was that grave?
Somewheres in the West.
Out west, yeah.
Yeah.
Your father went all the way out there just to see his grave.
No, I've seen. In 1926. Yeah. My father took my mother on a coast-to-coast trip,
I'm just
Oh,
wow. Uh-huh.
and they went to California,
And they found Buffalo Bill's grave.
and they dumped my sister and I off to summer camp in 1926, and they traveled all the way across the country. So that was one of the
Wow.
stops they made.
I love your old TV also.
There's a couple of them.
Does
Well,
this still
that's-
work, Bob, Uncle Bob? This television?
This doesn't work. It's only a piece of
Oh, it's
furniture
a piece
now.
of furniture now.
Yeah.
But it holds things for you.
They what?
It holds things for you. It serves a
Yeah. It's been there for like 40 years, so
They used to make TVs with such nice wood. They used to use good wood for TVs.
yeah, sure. But it's yeah.
I bet you saw a lot of important events with this TV.
Oh yeah, inaugurations, Super Bowls, World Series, yeah.
I just want to shoot a little bit more of the wall. It's
I'm
such
gonna
a
get, it's a little, I don't know if we're using, I was trying to get all of it and I couldn't.
Oh yeah,
from
let me
there,
try.
But maybe
Here,
from here.
here, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, this is like that from Sylvia.
Oh, she writes her name. That's so good. I just found a really nice book for Sylvie. A friend of mine made a book. She went around and she took pictures of animals, not living ones, in buildings, like in the columns of
Oh,
buildings
really?
all over Brooklyn. So I'm going to give it to Bobby tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, the light, isn't it? The light's pretty there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have such a nice apartment.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah, it's comfortable, it's private.
Yeah, and I like
You have
it.
lots of things around you, but when you come home here, it must feel good.
Yeah, it's home, whenever the idea of going to one of these assisted living places.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you don't even need that.
No.
Every day, Sofía, you still do your walk every day?
Yeah.
You walk, how many miles a day do you walk?
No,
Or a mile, about
I walk 40 minutes a day.
40 minutes a day.